So this is going to be a discussion video. The plan is for it to be short, maybe like less than 10 minutes. I just wanted to talk about exactly my review system and what goes into play. The reason why, for example, I will give House of Earth and Blood 5 stars and give The Shadow Between Us 2 stars and give The Diviners 3 stars. For example, there's a thinking, there's an instinct to the way I do my reviews, and I just figured that I would share it in today's video. And before we kick things off, apologies for the cut hairs if you can see them visible on my shirt. I really do need to get a lint roller as soon as possible. So there are certain things I consider when I'm actually giving my ratings to a book. I would like to state one, that ratings are personal. So the way in which my rating system works will totally be different from the way in which your own rating system works, and will be different from the way my grandfather's rating system works. For example, he likes more serious, heavy, studious books, and as such, if he picks up a book that is easy to read, where the language seems to flow seamlessly, his belief is that, oh, writing that book was easy, and so it would actually dock a couple of stars. I know it does not make any sense, but this just drives my point to the fact that rating books for us is a personal experience, and ultimately what we're trying to say is that this is how I feel, this is how this book made me feel by the time I finished it, and this is the rating I want to give it. So for me, there are certain factors I consider. One, how easy it was for me to consume the book. Now, this is not to say that, oh, books with heavy text are books that I would not rate well. One of my favorite book ever is You Must Set Forth at Dawn by Wole Soyinka. She's thick and it's like really tiny biblical print, as you can see. I love this book. I enjoyed this book. I think I loved it even more than his Ake, which is his childhood memoir book. And Ake was one of my favorite books for so long. So this book is not an easy book to read. Wole Soyinka is not an easy writer to get into, unless you're reading his collection of short stories, unless you're reading his drama pieces. But his prose work, it tends to be very verbose. It tends to have a technicality to his writing, which is different from the ease of style that Achebe employed in his writing, for example. But yet I can pick two separate books, one from Achebe and one from Soyinka, and I will still give them both 5 stars, because it's not just the technicality. Like I said, it's not, oh, is it easy or simplistic. It's just exactly how I can get into it, because there are some complex books that still reel you in and you just lose yourself in the story with the mastery of the language, and there are some complex books that will put you to sleep immediately. So it has nothing to do with, oh, does this person use big grammar, is this person training to be a linguistic teacher, for example. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with just how easy it is for me, like I said, to get into the book. So that is one thing I consider. The second thing I consider is, okay, how well did this book engage me? How well did it capture my attention? If it's a book that I picked up and I dropped shortly after, case in point, The Shadows Between Us, which maintained my attention up to a point, like up to the first 100 pages, and then it dropped my attention and I did not pick it up again for another 3 weeks until I finally finished it up. Like, then if that's the case, then I would not rate the book very high, which is expected. I gave Shadows Between Us 2 stars in my March wrap-up because of that reason. It was actually one of the reasons why. So I always look for, okay, this book I'm reading, did I binge read? Like, did I binge through it? So if you notice, books that I binge read, I tend to give like really, really high ratings, almost 5 stars. Minimum is 4 stars, because for you to keep me engaged, for me not to be able to drop that book, that is a great story, at least to me. The third thing I look for is how the book ended, like the climax of the story. If the climax is something that was building and then boom, blew me totally and completely out of the water, if the climax is the kind of climax where I cannot breathe, I cannot think, I cannot look away, I'm just being surprised left, right and center, I find myself screaming. Yes, I found myself screaming at while reading the climax of a book before. So yeah, a book like that, I would definitely rate it high. It's the reason why, for example, I said I gave it 5 stars to House of Earth and Blood. It was on a 4-star until we reached the 150, until we reached the last 150 pages, and then that book just flew, and it just bumped to 5 stars for me. It's the reason why I dropped The Diviners. The Diviners was a 4 stars for me for a long period of time, and I dropped it to a 3 stars because I felt very unsatisfied with the way in which it ended. I felt that the climax, there were too many conveniences, too many things that dragged, too many things that lagged, and then after the climax there was another almost 30, 40, 50 pages of story after the climax, even though Liba Bray should have ended things like at that high note, so that is what people have in their minds as they are rating your book. Because see, when you give people enough time after your climax has passed before you wrap up the story, you leave room for the boring parts, the boring bits to like get in. I know Liba Bray was doing the later part of the Diviners as set up for the rest of the book in the series, but I think he did that book a disservice to me, which was why I dropped the rating to a 3 stars. Yeah, definitely. Another thing I look at when I'm giving like my book a rating is how the book made me feel, and it is a diversity of emotions. For example, Girl at Heart made me laugh. It was a fun, cute story whereby all about a girl bending like gender rules and trying to find herself. Initially it was a 3 stars, but the way I felt at the end of that book, I just felt very happy and it was just funny, so I gave it a 4 stars. It's the reason why To All the Boys I Love Before, I gave it a 5 stars. It made me feel warm and comforted and at home, like I was taking warm cookies. I had milk on the fridge. I could hear my mom singing. Like, that book gave me a sense of satisfaction, so I gave it 5 stars. Wicked King had me on the edge of my seat, and by the end, when Carden made that proclamation, it left me stunned. I was just so fucking surprised, and wow, my mind was just blown. I gave that a 5 stars. There are books that left me in tears, like Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. When I finished that book, I cried harder at the end of that book than I did at the end of There Was a Country by Chinua Achebe. So like I said, I feel different emotions when reading different books, and that totally does count for my rating. If I'm reading a book and I feel absolute and total complete disgust at the end of it, case in point The Last Duty by Isidore Ikpowo, and then that will just drop the rating drastically for me. Like, there is no turning back. So even though the emotions are varied, I think that they do count. I do think that they are important with regards to me giving the ratings to the book. And then there is the haunting factor. Like, if a book stays on my mind long after I've finished it, I've gone back to change a rating for a book if it haunts me well enough. Like, if I cannot get the book out of my head, if I can still see phrases from the book when I close my eyes, if I can still see these characters, if everywhere I turn this book haunts me. Yeah, there are books like that I've given multiple ratings to. Like, I've revised my ratings of them. Like, goddamn, okay, when I first read The Poppy War and then The Dragon Republic, those books haunted me. Sure, I didn't need to change my rating because when I finished, I was like, this is a 5-star book, but it still haunts me. I still cannot stop thinking about those books that weigh on me, that settle on me like a blanket, that settle on me like a covering. I go back. If it is that maybe I'd initially given it a 4-star, I can go back and be like, nope, this book is a 5-star because it is still haunting me. I still can't get over it. So there is that. And then there's the character, the last point, which is characters. Like, if I can hate your story, but if your characters are engaging, I would give it a high rating for the characters. I personally think, for example, that Night House was a 4-star read, but I love the character of Galaxy Stern so much that I gave it a 5 stars, and I make no regrets for that, because like I said, a character can elevate a story for me. A character can change or make or break a story for me. So if I love your characters a lot, if the plot makes no sense, if the writing is just blasé and just barely there, but I love your characters and I find myself rooting for your characters, I would bump an extra star or a star and a half to the book just for the characters, and I make no apologies for that. And then the very last factor I consider, I know I already said I consider last factor for characters, but like the very last factor, which does not apply across all genres, just to romance, and it's the reason I said that the very, 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 very last factor for me for romance has to do with the sexual chemistry and the sexual tension. Like, not necessarily the sex, of course, if it's really, really hot and smoking and amazing, will totally get a romance book an extra star for me. But even if there's not that much sex, even if the sex is not very graphic or detailed, if the sexual chemistry can be cut with a 10-foot chainsaw, like, that is going to get all the additional stars possible. Give me sexual chemistry and tension. I live for that shit. I live for it, especially in romance books. Like, I live for sexual tension, sexual chemistry. Like, yeah, I smile because it makes me so goddamn happy. But yeah, those are factors that affect the way in which I rate my books. I know sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's not serious, sometimes it's a, oh, what exactly do I have to learn from things? Oh yes, and then there's something else that this is just a throwaway. Not all books have to have it, but if a book has it, I give it extra point, and that is characters going through trauma and finding healing from that. I automatically give books like that extra stars because they resonate so deeply within me. It's the reason why I would always give Sarah J Maas books like extra stars, because our characters do go through some amount of brokenness and some amount of healing in their books. It's the reason why Order of the Phoenix and Half-Blood Prince are my two favorite Harry Potter books, because in one, Harry suffers loss, and in the second one, Harry deals with the loss that he suffered. So yeah, I have a weakness for that, but this is just a throwaway. All books I read don't have to have them, but if I come across a book that has it and it's done fairly well, it warms my heart. I find it heartwarming. It's the same reason why I have a fondness in my heart for Steadfast and Keepsake, which are book 2 and 3 in the True North series by Serena Bowen. The first one has a character dealing with addiction and finding his way back to, of course it's found sobriety, but finding his way back into society and finding himself back after he leaves prison. The second one has to do with a character who was tossed out of a cult where he was born and raised, and had to basically dealt with creating a new life for himself after he had to leave, after he was forced to leave, after he was driven away from the only family he's ever known. So yeah, I like I said, I have a fondness for characters dealing with their trauma and finding healing, especially if it is done, not especially if it is done well. If it's not done well, I don't give a shit, but if it's done well, I give it an extra stars. And that's why Keepsake and Steadfast for me are my absolute favorite, my favorite two books in the True North series. They both got 5 perfect stars from me. So yeah, but those are my thoughts with exactly how I rate my books. Let me know down in the comments down below what your own rating system is like. What are the things that stays in your mind when you're rating a book? And if you've never actually thought about it, if you've always just been kind of casual of, oh, this is how I feel about this book, etc., and I give it this rating, still let me know down in the comments down below. I want to know about it. But that would be all. If you like this video, please do not forget to give it a big thumbs up. Check out my other videos, subscribe if you want to, and if you do decide to subscribe, do not forget to click on that notification bell so you can know the minute I have a new video go up. I make new videos every Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I'll see you soon. Until then, stay passionate, love books, love yourself. Bye.